Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Favors Single Life Tips. So, I want to talk about this concept of entitlement and how we need to prevent entitlement. And the way in which we do that is we need to be sure that we set the right standards, boundaries, and expectations for romantic relationships. Sometimes we do not always have the emotional wherewithal to understand those concepts. And so we basically enter into relationships, especially as women, and invest too soon. We never get a good understanding about whether the partner is really with us to be with us, or whether the partner really has someone else in mind and is just using us for the time being. Many people are rebounding in relationships. There's always some sort of core partner that they are struggling with. And so instead of addressing those issues with that relationship, they go out and seek a rebound to soothe themselves wherever they hurt emotionally, psychologically, mentally, as well as financially. They keep that person on the hook for however long the person permits and for however long the core partner makes the person wait. And then once the person has decided, the core partner has decided to take them back, they go on ahead and drop the rebound, or they don't always tell the rebound that the core partner has accepted them back and keep the rebound at arm's length. So just that that's just a sort of quick reference to the concept of rebounding. But entitlement is something that we really do need to give more attention to, because when we invest too soon in relationships, we are working under the expectation or the assumption that the relationship, whatever the status it is at the moment, whether it is dating to convert to long term, or dating to convert to long term to marriage, whatever the status is, we need to really get a good understanding of where we stand in these relationships before we invest. Women are notorious for investing too soon. They start buying something for their partners. They might move the partner in. They already think marriage, even if they're just living together with the partner, with the male partner. And it never occurs to them to think about whether or not the partner really does want to be in a relationship. It's like the person who operates with this assumption that I want to get married, but the woman never asks the man if he wants to get married, and she doesn't also discern or assess the situation and to determine if he is actually marriage material. So people will stay in relationships for so many years thinking that the relationship is going to convert, when in actuality the other partner of the relationship never intended for it to convert, because they don't believe in marriage. They might stay with you for many years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they believe in long-term commitment either. And so a lot can be resolved. A lot of future problems could be prevented if we had conversations. Because when you are meeting someone for the very first time, it is about discovery. Dating is about discovery. It's not about trying to seal the deal. It's not about trying to confirm if this person is going to be my boyfriend or not. What it is about trying to figure out what type of person this person is, what type of character, what type of integrity is the person, a person of his or her word. If the person says, I'm going to call you on a certain day at a certain time, and that person does not call you, their word, their integrity, their character is a little bit questionable, because they are the ones who said they're going to call you at a certain time on a certain date, right? And so, of course, there may be some exceptions to the rule, but if you make a promise to do something, you need to know if you can fulfill that promise, meaning that you need to know if you have the capacity to set goals, endure goals, complete goals. And when you find that people are not doing that, but they are always trying to hold you accountable, that is something to think about. So this viral post was all on all social media platforms, and I have been using it in various articles, and I have copied and pasted it to my profile in different areas. And now I want to add an audio version. I actually wrote an article about it, and you can find it on my website, reginawhitefavors.com. And I have written various articles on this type of topic. Like, for instance, don't move in a man as a woman. If you are a woman, a single woman, you are under no obligation to take care of an adult man. That's what I mean by that, especially when you don't have a commitment. So I have a lot of different articles on this topic. So I'm just going to read this and add some analysis, take it maybe paragraph by paragraph or point by point, and add some analysis where I think what the person is suggesting and how we can sort of um, plan better when it comes to these types of situations. So, I can't believe my girlfriend really think that I'm going to marry her and we'll live happily ever after. Soon as I get a decent job, I'm going to leave her and start dating my types. People need to understand that we are not entitled to be with them forever just because they were with us when we were broke. We each have our own preference, and that doesn't make me love my current girlfriend any less. Things change, feelings change. It is a vicious life cycle. If my girl could leave me for a guy who is well established and appreciates her more than I do, I would gladly accept and never hold her hostage just because she's been with me through thick and thin. This entitlement over people's lives is the reason people resort to violent behavior. So I thought that the last sentence was very noteworthy, that you need to pay attention to this, because one thing about, if you're trying to make someone love you, or if you are trying to make someone stay in a relationship, that person is going to retaliate in some kind of way. They're going to take vengeance. And the fact that he has decided to use the words violent behavior should tell you something about his intention, that if the girlfriend that he's with right now doesn't let him go, or doesn't let him be with whomever he wants to be with, then she could expect some violence on his behalf. So let's go back to the very top. I can't believe my girlfriend really think that I'm going to marry her and we'll live happily ever after. So somewhere there's this assumption or expectation from the woman of marriage, that I'm not investing all my time into you and it not lead to marriage. But he's telling her via a public platform, social media post, that he's not intending to marry her. So then you wonder to yourself, if you did not intend to marry her, how would she have this assumption that you're going to marry her? And somewhere on some level, he must have said something to lead her into that understanding, which is really a misunderstanding. Because if he's saying that I can't believe she thinks I'm going to marry her, that means he must have said something to the effect that he's going to marry her. Because it's almost like a mockery of the whole relationship. All this time you thought I was going to marry you. I'm not marrying you. So then what were some of the sample activities then that he did? Because you can have somebody who says they don't want you in so many words, but then turn around and pull at you as if you are both in a relationship. And that's kind of hard to really understand, because what happens is these men hide their hand and expect women to understand that they are hiding their hand. They expect all of us to get this whole romantic game by telling us, though, that they're not playing games. And so when he says, I can't believe my girlfriend really thinks that I'm actually going to marry her and we'll live happily ever after, somewhere he made false promises. Because women don't just automatically live off promises without some kind of evidence. You say you're going to marry me, and then you buy me a ring, or you come, we're paying bills together, we're going out together. And that's the problem with women too. We invest too soon before we get a really good understanding of the relationship. And so we just assume day by day, week by week, hour by hour, month by month, that we are in a solid relationship that's going to actually convert, when in reality it's not going to convert into anything. What it's going to convert into is him treating her as a come up woman, that he's going to use her. And that's another article I have written, reconciling the come up woman. He's just going to use her for a season in his life, not in her life, but a season in his life, to get whatever he needs to get done, and get better and get healed, or whatever you want to call it. And then he's going to leave. Soon as I get a decent job, I'm gonna leave her and start dating my type. So he's suggesting that the woman that he's with right now is not his type. She's not his type, but he's going to waste her time regardless. If he doesn't have a decent job, that means he doesn't have the finances to take care of himself as an adult. So that's likely, it's likely that he is living with her in her house, where she's taking care of the majority of the bills, because he wouldn't make these comments if he was living in his own place, and if he was, or if he was living at his mother's house, his parents' house. He wouldn't need to make those comments, because he would be self-sufficient, and he could make the kind of decisions that he wants to make without even having to consider her. So if he's making these types of comments, this means that he is not where he needs to be financially. That's a given. But he's also not where he needs to be as an adult. So that further suggests that he is living with her. And so then he gets into this kind of statement, almost like an editorial, and it's a third person plural perspective on the situation. It's almost like he's giving it a bird's eye view. And when you go third person, it is you giving some distance to what you just said. So at the very beginning, he was talking in first person I. But then when he switches his perspective, he's speaking, or he's writing from third person plural. So that gives him a lot of distance from the situation, as almost as if it doesn't apply to him. So people need to understand that we are not entitled to be with them forever just because they were with us when we were broke. And that's one of the things that women struggle with. They will ride and die with some man who is not where he's supposed to be, move him in, take care of him, provide caregiving, submit, even in a non-marital situation, and sort of ride this assumption that is actually going to convert to something long term. Because why in the world would a woman invest in any type of situation, any type of romantic situation, that is not going to convert to something long term? Women don't just create a whole bunch of short term mating strategies. They don't do a bunch of rebounding when it comes to men. There may be exceptions to the rule, but most women pursue romantic stability, emotional stability. They may be struggling in other areas of their lives, but they're not going to jump from partner to partner just because. If they leave a partner, it is likely because that partner is cheating, and the partner doesn't want to act right, or there is an abusive situation, something like that. But it's not just something that they do automatically just to do it out of sport. And so when you see this man here saying that people need to understand that we're not entitled to be with them forever just because they were with us when we were broke, he's suggesting that he's broke. Because if he doesn't have a decent job, he doesn't have, he's not making enough money to sustain himself by getting his own apartment, paying for his own apartment out of his own pocket, not always having to borrow the money, and staying in that apartment for more than a month. And so he's suggesting then that he's broke. And um, he's also suggesting that the girl that he's with, she doesn't necessarily have to have a whole lot of money, but she has more than enough to sustain them both. Now, he's not going to take that into consideration. He's not going to take into consideration her investment. He's not going to take into consideration that she may love him and that she's showing it and that she may be submissive to him. He's not going to take all of that into consideration. All he's going to take into consideration is that she does not represent his preference. And so he's just going to sort of hold his peace and tolerate the situation as if she's doing something wrong to him. He's going to hold his peace and tolerate the situation, keep looking for a better job, give her sex, give her some kind of companionship, as if she couldn't get that by herself without him. In other words, he's taking up a lot of space in her life when he doesn't even plan on staying. Because if he would just leave her alone, she can get somebody else who actually cares for her and who may be a preference for her, or she may be a preference for him. But the fact that he's holding her hostage just because he's broke, just because he doesn't have a decent job, just because he can't go and get his own place. Because I really believe that if he was in a much more financially stable place, he can make better, sober decisions. He could just bypass the person who is not his preference and go after the person who is actually his preference. So we each have our own preference, and that doesn't make me love my current girlfriend any less. Things change, feelings change. It is a vicious life cycle. Well, you can't love your girlfriend, your current girlfriend, if you think about her as not being your preference. Sure, I mean, you can have love for people, but to take this issue public and make a point of saying that she's not your preference and that you are only using her until you get a decent job, and because you're broke, should tell you that you don't love this person, because you wouldn't mistreat the person in this way. You wouldn't make a mockery of the relationship in this way. You wouldn't um, be so hostile, because taking a third person point of view on this situation is showing some form of hostility towards your current situation. It's like you hate that you have to live with her, but you don't have anything else. Um, you don't have the money to take care of yourself right now, and so you're just going to tolerate yourself. Well, that means you are actually miserable. That means that you are unhappy. That means you are angry, because that assumption cannot be any less true, because in the last paragraph, the last sentence, he's talking about violent behavior. Why add that? Why add even a reference to violent behavior if you didn't feel already currently some kind of hostility towards her? Because when you say things change, feelings change, it is a vicious life cycle. Your feelings did not change while you were in the relationship, and they're not going to change when you get to the end of the relationship. Your feelings about your current girlfriend changed, or actually were how you think now at the beginning of the relationship. You don't just all of a sudden get hostile towards somebody, or you don't all of a sudden get hostile. Say, I'm not going to marry this person. You believe that at the very beginning of the relationship. You knew that you were not going to marry her the very first day you met her. It doesn't take a man a long time to make a decision about marriage. He knows what type of woman he's going to frame to use, what type of woman he's going to frame to rebound with, what type of woman he's going to frame to commit any kind of violence towards, what type of woman he's going to frame to mistreat, right? Be miserable with, and what type of woman he's actually going to straighten up and marry. He knows that from the very moment that he meets the woman. He may not have full confirmation. He may have to take on some dates. He may have to talk to her, have a conversation with her. But this girlfriend that he's talking about, he's already suggesting, or he's already implying that she's not a preference. So he knew from the very beginning of the relationship that she was not a preference. So if she's not a preference, then she is something other than a preference. And that puts her on a lower ranking, dating ranking level. So the preferences that he wants are the people who might represent nines and tens. So the girlfriend that he's with, that he's using, could be a 7-8 or a 5 or 6. But the very fact that he wants to use violent behavior to try to get her to understand it, that he doesn't want her, tells you that she's probably a 5 or 6, using her, not going to stay with her, believes that she's not worthy of marriage. That's another thing. He believes that she's not worthy of marriage when he says she thinks that I'm going to marry her. Because if she was worthy of marriage, so all of the investing that she's putting into the relationship, thinking that it's going to convert to marriage, it's just a waste of investing. It's like pouring water into an empty well, into a bottomless pit. You just keep pouring and pouring and pouring, and nothing nothing is holding the vessel. So then when she's pouring her heart, she's pouring her mind, she's pouring her body, she's pouring her finances, she's pouring her mental state. And this could go on for years because we don't know what type of educational background the man has if he's trying to look for a decent job. He might actually have a job, but it's not a decent job. And when he's talking about decent job in terms of going after his preferences, he's talking about the type of job that's going to attract a preference. So that means he cannot make $25,000 a year. He would have to get into 50, 60, 70, maybe 6 figures in order to attract the type of person he really wants. Otherwise, he's just going to continue to stay in this relationship that he doesn't want to be in. So it suggests a lot about some kind of gap in his thinking. There's some unhealed areas that where he feels like he has to use somebody as a come up, where he just can't depend on himself to get himself where he needs to go. So these feelings change, vicious life cycle. No, he believed what he believed about the current girlfriend from the very beginning. There was nothing, he could say whatever he want to say, but the words already tell you what he's thinking. So if my girl could leave me for a guy who's well established and appreciates her more than I do, I would gladly accept and never hold her hostage just because she's been with me through thick and thin. But he's holding her hostage. And he's suggesting that he's not well established. He's also further suggesting that he doesn't appreciate her. He would not gladly accept and never hold her hostage. He's holding her hostage now. It's such a contradiction to say that she's not my type, she's not my preference, and I'm not going to hold her hostage, but still stay at her house, eat her food, run up all the light bill, run up all the water, use all the water, take over her life, take up all her time, and still claim you're not holding her hostage. You are actually holding her hostage. But the responsibility for each of our lives individually, because we are 100% responsible for our lives, belongs to us. That even if a man is lying to us, there's always something in the pit of our stomach that tells us different. That's what we call intuition, woman's intuition. we always feel on some level that there is some insecurity with the situation and that we're not getting the full story. And what we often do is stay in these relationships until we can get the full story, when the person is already revealing to us what they think about us. Because if he feels like he is forced to be in this relationship, he's going to show it through different activities. And one of those main activities will be not to be available. And not to be available for the person is a belief system. Sometimes the person, he might ghost her. He might promise to be somewhere and not be somewhere. He might kick her out the car. He might abandon her. He might not bring a paycheck home, and she's forced to pay everything, to pay all the bills. He might get up in her face. He might cuss her out and blame alcohol. He might not come home at night. That is always one of the other activities that they will use. They don't come home. He might pursue his ex-girlfriend, even though he doesn't want the ex-girlfriend. He just do it just for activity and productivity, and because he's bored, and because he's trying to hurt the current girlfriend, because it's almost like he's saying, why don't you get a clue? I don't want you. Just because you let me stay here and I'm looking for a decent job and I'm broke and I'm not well established, doesn't mean I want you. Why don't you get a clue? Because if you got a clue, then I wouldn't have to endure all this hostility and hatred towards you, because I don't want you. But they don't tell you this information. What they do is they tell you that on some level that they want you, while pushing you away. And so it's this pull, it's this push and pull, keeping you at arm's length. And it's also a form of bait, hooking, and switching. That's one of the concepts that I have explored in many of my books, that they will bait you with the promise to provide. I love you. I want to be with you. We're going to be together. Hook you with sex, whether the sex is good or not, right? But it sustains the relationship because there's no real conversation or commitment talk. And then switch on you when they feel like they got you sort of staying on a hook, or they feel like they got you where they want you. They switch on you. And the switching is always returning to something, maybe watching porn, having sex with an ex-girlfriend, playing around with an ex-girlfriend, trying to rationalize it, justify it, doing anything that represents a person being single and not in a relationship. They'll do everything but try to confirm that you are in a relationship. And so that bait, hook, and switch really is something that messes with you, because as long as they know they got you and that you are not going anywhere, then they can continue the cycle. That's what he's talking about, this vicious life cycle. He doesn't have the intellectual capacity or insight to understand what he's truly doing. But he understands that it is a vicious life cycle that's going back and forth, trying to find the person you really want to be with, but only using the person you have right now to pass the time. And so people oftentimes will rebound to a person so they don't lose certain relationship type benefits, especially when it comes to companionship and sex. And then if you are a higher earner, they're definitely going to gravitate to you. So when he's saying here that if she found somebody more well established and appreciated her more, so that suggests again that he's not well established and that he does not appreciate her, then I would never hold her back. I will let her go. So you mean while you are still trying to find a decent job and you're broke and you're not well established, and she found somebody appreciating her more, that you would let her go? You're not going to let her go, because that, if you let her go, that means you have to leave the house. That means you would have to go and move in with your parents, or another family member. You're not going to do that. You're going to sell her a dream. You're going to repeat the process, bait, hook, and switch. You're going to sell her the dream of marriage, that you're saying that you don't plan on marrying her. You're going to sell her the dream so you can extend your lifetime at her house. And so this entitlement over people's lives, again, he doesn't have the intellectual insight, because that's exactly what he's doing, holding her hostage under the belief system of entitlement. And that this entitlement over people's lives is the reason people resort to violent behavior. Well, he's talking from his vantage point, but he's not even considering that she could actually snap on him. He's not considering that all the mess that he's putting her through, the confusion, the chaos, the drama, everything, that she could snap on him. But he believes that he has control of the situation. And in many regards, he does. If she's still putting up with a person who doesn't contribute fully, who believes that she is not his preference, and he is not well established and doesn't appreciate, if she's putting up with that, then it's also on her to reassess her choices. And men lately have been mocking women who have been voicing their concerns about romantic relationships and how men treat women. Men have been mocking women and saying they need to choose better. And I have, in many posts on Facebook, Instagram, etc., I have taken a lot of issues with this, and I've been very offended. But then when you think about it from the viewpoint of being a 100% responsible adult, and the fact that you are not asking the right questions, or you are jumping too hastily into romantic type situations by putting sex before conversation, then I have to agree, we do need to choose better. And choosing better requires that we wait. We need to stop feeling pressured to commit too early through investing time, investing money, investing body, investing our spirit, our spirit. We are creating way too many soul ties when we engage too hastily in these relationships. And if we just wait and not feel pressured, and not and feeling pressured is not just from the other person, is putting pressure on ourselves to engage hastily, thinking that we're going to get a return. But anytime you sow something hastily, or you engage something hastily, you cannot expect a fully developed harvest. It's seed time and harvest time, right? And so the harvest reveals what you sowed. So if you are sowing sex too soon, you're going to reap a harvest of sex too soon, because you're not going to reap an emotional connection. You're going to continue to reap sex too soon. So every time you have a situation with a relationship, and you think you're going to talk things out and really come to an understanding about things, well, that's not going to happen, because you sow sex too soon. And so you're going to continue to reap. So when you don't get the understanding, or the partner doesn't get the understanding that you're hoping for, you put sex on it again. And every time you keep putting sex on it, that's just for a moment. You both get up out of the bed and go your separate ways as if you're roommates. This situation really is reminiscent of a roommate if he doesn't plan on staying. He just essentially needed a place to stay. And so he found a woman, framed her as a person he could use, called her, put a label of girlfriend on her, but it's really fake, because he's not going to convert her to anything else, and tolerated the situation however long he can, and he's going to tolerate it until he gets a decent job, because he knows he cannot get a person who is his preference without a decent job. So when you're thinking about these concepts, thinking about this viral post, and thinking about the concept of entitlement, consider this idea of waiting, because it's not right that a person says you shouldn't feel entitled to their life when they feel entitled to your life. You're saying that she should not expect me to marry her. She shouldn't feel entitled to marriage from me. Yet you are living in her house and feeling entitled to all of her resources until you can get a decent job, get out of broke status, become well established, and then appreciate her and say goodbye. Because what's going to end up happening in this situation is, once he gets himself together, and he's still going to be selling the dream. Once he gets himself together, he's going to come home one day, pack his bags right in front of her, and walk out the door. And it's going to be a shock. It's going to be hurtful. You can lose your mind. Or it could be a situation where he's promised to be with her, love her, all that kind of stuff, even give her a fake ring, and turn around and marry someone the very same day, or the very next day. That happens too. And so this person here who says that the woman, the current girlfriend, feels entitled to his life, and that he might resort to violent behavior, is a person that shows his cards much earlier in the relationship by their nastiness and unkindness and mockery, but we don't listen as women. We don't listen. We see what we want to see. We pull at the relationship in the way we want to pull at the relationship. We delude and convince ourselves that we can convert the person into marriage. And even if he decided to marry her, his mindset is still of the mindset that he's not going to be married to her. He can literally and legally marry her, but not be married in his heart towards her, to the point that he married her so he can secure a place to stay and secure one half of the finances, 50-50. But as soon as he meets his preference, he will divorce her. He would divorce the current girlfriend and move on to his preference. That happens as well. So when you are thinking about preventing entitlement, the main goal you should have is to have the conversations necessary. That you are in a discovery mode. You are not in a confirmation mode. You are not in a sealing the deal mode. You are in a discovery mode. How does he act when you are in relationship with him those first few months? If he's acting a certain kind of way that is very dangerous to your relationship in the first 3 months of your relationship, what do you think he's going to do when you get further into the relationship? If he hurts you early on, because remember, when we start these relationships, we want to impress. We're trying to impress. We're trying to show the person all of who we are, what we got. We brag on ourselves. We tell on ourselves. We run our mouths. We do all kinds of stuff. When you find a person not willing to do that, and they would rather show you their bad side versus impressing you, that tells you you're going to have a chaotic, drama filled, soul tied, non-compatible, no emotional connection relationship. And it's going to go good, like it's going to go bad like that for the longest of time, until he gets it within himself to leave, or until you recognize it for what the relationship truly is and exit. Because again, if he's talking about violent behavior, then he's talking about that processing leading to you trying to convince him to stay when he doesn't want to stay. And if he doesn't want to stay and you keep trying to make him stay, he's going to result to violent behavior, meaning that he's going to get up in your face, he's going to yell at you, he's going to cuss you out, he's going to do everything to make it clear to you he doesn't want you. And what happens is we wait too long in these relationships to the point that they actually do use violence towards us. There has been increasing gun violence towards women, to the point that these women are exiting the relationships through death. And there are always warning signs. There's always an open door somewhere in that relationship to exit it and leave it alone. And so that's what I want to leave you with. This is a very hard discussion, because I've been bothered by this post, and this is the first time I'm doing an audio version of it. But I've been very bothered by it, because how dare you take up that person's time when you don't really want that person? But then we got to, as women, do better. How dare we let men take up our time, feel entitled to our time when they really don't want us? And they told us in multiple different ways. And what happens is we continue to look at how they keep pulling back at us when they return. Just because they return and pull at us does not mean that they want us. They're just bored. Or the person that they were really trying to go after wouldn't give them the time or day. The person they struck out or something like that, or the person that they really want is not coming around, so they come back and pull at us, but they don't want us. And we need to believe them. That's how you prevent entitlement. It goes back to Maya Angelou's statement. Whenever somebody shows you who they are, believe them. We need to quit playing these games with ourselves and trying to reason ourselves out of what they are actually saying and how they are acting. If they don't want us, they say it through words or they say it through actions, we need to believe them the first time, exit the relationship, self-reflect, heal, grieve and heal, continue to work and move on. And don't let them come back. That's another thing. Don't let them come back. Do not accept them come back. And so preventing entitlement ultimately is letting your yes be yes and your no be no. So that's what I wanted to discuss. I still might decide to create more video, more discussions through blog articles using this post, but this is the first audio version. So you can visit my website, reginawhitefavors.com, for more tips, to read more blogs. I am also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can just type in Regina White Favors. So please like, follow, subscribe. And then you can purchase my books on Amazon, where I talk about rebound relationships. So I want to thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.